Hey, welcome to Pennsylvania Newsmakers, and as always, thanks for watching. Well, scams and more scams. Pennsylvania's Attorney General Josh Shapiro joins me, but first, let's take a look at road and bridge construction in this state. As they say, let's get to it.
Welcome to the fast-paced and unrehearsed weekly discussion featuring the leaders who help shape your world. Join us as we address the issues that impact you each and every day. This is Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And now, here's your host, Terry Madonna.
All right, how important is road and bridge construction to the state of Pennsylvania? Joining me to talk about that is Bob Latham. He's the Executive Vice President of the Associated Pennsylvania Constructors, and we have Bob on the program a good bit. Hey, welcome to the show.
Thanks. Great to be with you, Terry.
All right, I want to start with this. No modern economy that we're in the midst of the pandemic, and that's dominating everything, and rightfully so. But can you have a modern economy and a thriving economy without roads and bridges that are efficient, that are up to date, that don't have, how can you get it? We have a large state. I'm going on and on, I know.
I know, Terry. I mean, that's a topic that if we had an hour-long show, we could maybe scratch the surface, but you're right. But we've got, when I come on here, you ask me for an update on how things are going, and usually I say, well, we're kind of bumping along. Right now, unfortunately, we've run off the road and fallen into a ditch. In November, PennDOT announced that it is completely out of money. Now, they've been talking about financial woes, and they've had problems because of the pandemic. And, when you go back to March and April when people weren't driving, they lost money because that's what drives their funding. But somewhat surprising, in November, we're out of money. We can't do any work. We have to shut projects down, and we can't do anything going forward. They've asked for a $600 million bond issue. The legislature said it was too much at the last minute, and there has been a lot of back and forth. The bottom line was our industry, 10,000 people that work on the roads, maybe another 20,000 that work ancillary in the industry, are in jeopardy of being laid off. And at a time when we're decimating our restaurant and other industries, why would we do that to the construction industry at the same time? So it's a big problem that we're facing immediately.
I just don't know how you can run an economy. I mean, we have a big state. It's an old state. The roads and the bridges, and even into the cities, they're constantly in need of repair. But here's the point I want to make.
Sure.
You would think that despite these big differences between Democrats and Republicans, you would think that is one thing they would agree on because it's so important to the economy of the state.
Absolutely. Now, fortunately, after some haranguing back and forth, we saw the governor get together with legislative leaders earlier in the week, and an agreement was reached. And then on the heels of that, thankfully, Treasurer Joe Torsello, we want to give him a shout out for stepping up and saying, he's found some monies that will keep things going. But we have an immediate problem right now. The projects that are underway are still going, but PennDOT has announced that they're not bidding any more future work, and that doesn't improve the infrastructure like you just said.
Yeah, this is absolutely baffling to me. I understand the differences, and we've talked about the differences on this show, as they say, ad nauseum, but I just don't understand why Democrats and Republicans can't get together on this. Now, I know the state has some fiscal problems. There's no doubt about it.
Right.
But it seems to me this is too critical to the economy. So are we talking about short-term funding or long-term funding, or both?
Both. Until you said both, I was going to say yes. And so that's the problem. You and I have been talking about long-term funding for quite some time. We passed a major transportation bill in 2013. We immediately siphoned off $200-some million of that for the state police and the general fund, and that continues to be a problem. We have more fuel-efficient vehicles, and that cuts into a consumption-based fuel tax, which we're based on. We don't have any inflation sensitivity in that. And then we have more and more investment by GM and other manufacturers in electric vehicles, which don't pay hardly anything for road use. So all that has to be addressed.
Yeah, and we've talked about the diversion of funding. I mean, look, the state police is important. There's no doubt about it. They need their funding. But should it come at the expense of something as important as roads and bridges? Again, I'm not talking about,
we have never said cut the state police budget. In fact, they need money. They have a very important role, obviously a crucial role in public safety and a number of other things, and in some cases roadway safety. But the bottom line is we have the second highest gas tax in the country, and 12 cents of that gas tax are going to the general fund. It's not going to road improvements. And so you talk about this deficit that PennDOT has. If we weren't sending $700 million a year to the general fund, would there be a problem?
Yeah. All right, here's what we're going to do. We're going to run to a solution to this, and I know Bob has an answer to that, and we'll be back after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is presented by the Pennsylvania Chamber of Business and Industry, the statewide voice of business, and by the Pennsylvania State Education Association and Partners for Public Education, bringing the power of a great education to our schools, our students, and our communities. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Highway Information Association, the go-to source to learn about transportation projects and issues. Please visit pahighwayinfo.org. And by the Pennsylvania Manufacturers Association. Business in Pennsylvania is our business.
All right, Bob Latham has given us an excellent description of the cash flow problems with roads and bridge construction and more. And now let's talk a little bit about the solutions to the problem. I think, that's something critically important, and whether or not we can get Democrats and Republicans on the same page. And let's not forget Governor Wolf.
So in the earlier segment, we said, is it short or long term? And the answer is yes, it's both. And so what we're dealing with here is, of course, because of the pandemic and the drop in driving, the Department of Transportation has lost, about $380 million this year, and projected additional losses due to a drop in driving. So that's the short-term hole that they say they need to fill with either a cash infusion or a bond issue or something like that. So that's issue number one. Issue number two is the long-term issue with a continued decline in revenues and the siphoning off of money. So we need to stop siphoning off money to the general fund, find a general fund solution to make sure that the state police are funded, but not out of the motor license fund. We have an explosion in the distribution economy here in Pennsylvania that's causing stress on the roads. There needs to be some sort of a recognition that industry is causing stress on the roads and maybe should be paying a fairer share. We've got technology that's creating more and more electric cars, and that has to be dealt with. And then finally, we don't have an inflation-sensitive consumption-based or oil company franchise tax, and that needs to be addressed. Those things can move the needle, move the construction needle up, and allow us to address more and more of our roads and bridges.
Well, I think I know the answer to this, but I'll ask the question anyway. How optimistic, or are you optimistic at all that this can get resolved? I mean, as we talked about its significance.
All the things I talked about will have an impact on either the general fund budget and/or with the euphemism revenue. Somebody has to pay for it. So ginning up the political will to do it is going to be very important. I think that PennDOT's running out of money, if you will, has illustrated the extent of the problem. And I think that it's brought it from sort of the back burner maybe to the forefront, and something that the General Assembly and the governor will work on in the new session.
I would imagine businesses that are thinking about coming into the state, depending on what kind of business they're in, are going to take a look at this situation that you've been describing in detail for our viewers. And unless that gets worked out, we could be losing businesses coming into the state, correct?
Absolutely. Access to adequate transportation is the number 2 issue that businesses look at for in locating where they are, particularly any business that moves goods in and out of a facility.
Yeah. Now, are we doing more goods and services being delivered across our roads and bridges because of the pandemic?
Absolutely. When we saw a drop in private car or personal mobility, we've seen obviously a huge increase in deliveries and the delivery economy. And again, if you drive up and down our interstates, when you used to, 5 years ago, you used to look out the window and see farmland. Now you see warehouse after warehouse after warehouse. That's trucks coming in and out and on our interstates that are causing stress, and that needs to be addressed.
All right. Thanks for coming in, and thanks for the update. All right. Scams and more scams. I have the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro, joining me after these words.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by Crossstate Credit Union Association. Credit unions, where people are worth more than money. To find a credit union that is right for you, go to ibelong.org. And by the Energy Association of Pennsylvania, Pennsylvania's energy information source. This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Association of Pennsylvania State College and University Faculties, representing the faculty and coaches who are devoted to providing quality public higher education for Pennsylvania's college students.
Well, joining me is Josh Shapiro. He's the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania. By the way, we had Tim DeFore. He's the newly elected Republican Auditor General. So we're going to get Democrats and Republicans on, as we always do on this program. Well, Mr. Shapiro, welcome to the program.
Good to be back with you, Terry.
All right. I'll tell you, this past week, you made a big emphasis on what I called scams and more scams. And I've had my problem with them, and they're ingenious about how they have ways of getting information from you.
Yeah, look, folks are trying to take advantage of Pennsylvanians, particularly while they're doing so much shopping online, spending a lot of time online due to the pandemic and, them trying to stay home and stay safe. And so we've released a number of ways that people can educate themselves about spotting a scam. You can find all that information on our website, attorneygeneral.gov. We also want people to, follow some basic rules, if you will, some basic things. And that is, don't click on unsolicited links. If you want to buy something from a shop, you go visit that website. You affirmatively go there as opposed to clicking on something they send you. Beware of phishing scams, emails that come through that seem to suggest they're coming from one person, but might look a little bit strange, and they're probably coming from somebody else. We have seen a lot of people lose a lot of money over time because of this. Now, the good news is a lot of times we're able to get people their money back if they alert us to the scam. And the best way you can do that is by emailing us directly at scams@attorneygeneral.gov. We follow up on every single one of these tips. Where we can, we get people their money back, and where we can, we prosecute the scammers.
All right, well, let's turn to another subject. I want to talk about election litigation. There have been, and look, I don't think there's anything wrong with candidates, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservative, about filing lawsuits. That's certainly within their right. But the lawsuits basically that the Trump campaign has filed in state after state has not produced very much in terms of reversing decisions. And then I'm not suggesting that mail-in ballots and those questions about it, that the legislature and the governor shouldn't get together and try to work out some of the problems. And there's no doubt there's some problems. But the fact is the litigation hasn't gone anywhere. And we have a big date on December 14th, right, when the Electoral College meets. And that's something that has to take place constitutionally and will take place.
Yeah, so Terry, let me break this down for you. The reason why the litigation, there have been dozens of lawsuits filed by Donald Trump and his enablers. The reason why they haven't gone anywhere, Terry, is because in a court of law, we don't deal with ridiculous tweets and rants. We deal with facts and evidence. And the president of the United States has absolutely none. That's why he has either lost every case or the case has been dismissed. Sadly, we've had to continue to litigate with this president and Rudy Giuliani and the other enablers because they can't seem to come to grips with reality. And here's the reality. This was a smooth and safe election. There was no widespread fraud, as the president asserts. That has been confirmed by Democrats and Republicans, by law enforcement leaders like me, and by lawmakers as well. The election has been certified. Joe Biden won the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. And on December 14th, 20 electors will meet and cast their votes unanimously for Joe Biden. And then at that point, those votes, combined with the other electoral votes from across the country, will be sent to the U.S. House of Representatives, where the election will be affirmed. The will of the people will be respected. I have said that for months. Throughout every litigation, throughout every effort where Donald Trump has tried to undermine the will of the people, I have made clear before the election, when we didn't know what the results would be, and after the election, once the people had voted, that it would be my top priority to make sure that the will of the people was respected. And that's exactly what we've done in Pennsylvania.
All right, we're going to run to a break, and I want to just add this before we do, that obviously you're reelected to your second term, and you have an agenda, and obviously what the Attorney General does, Republican or Democrat, and we've had both, as you know, really does matter in this state. And as they say, we'll be back in a moment.
This broadcast of Pennsylvania Newsmakers is brought to you by the Pennsylvania Medical Society. Inspired physicians committed to the good health of Pennsylvanians and the advancement of the practice of medicine.
All right, I'm chatting with the Attorney General of the state of Pennsylvania, Josh Shapiro. All right, General Shapiro, before we get into your agenda, is there anything else that the folks should know about consumer protection, given this environment that we happen to live in at the moment?
Yeah, look, just be really wary of scams. We put a whole laundry list of things that you can check out in order to keep yourself secure and safe. attorneygeneral.gov/scams is a website you can go to learn more. And of course, if you feel like you've become a victim of a scam, alert us right away. And I want to say something, particularly to older Pennsylvanians. We have found that they oftentimes feel embarrassed, don't know where to turn, feel alone. Understand that if you've been scammed, you're not alone. You're not the only person. Those scammers are working overtime to go after everyone here in Pennsylvania. And the best thing you can do for yourself and your neighbors is to let us know about the scam so we can go to work to get your money back.
All right. Thanks for that update. That's very important. All right. I want to talk about you have a number of second-term goals, an agenda, let's put it this way. Give me one or two of the most important.
Yeah, look, Terry, I've said all along that we put people before powerful institutions. And my track record bears that out, fighting to make sure, as we just talked about a moment ago, that if you've been scammed, you get your money back. To bigger ticket items where we're bringing back billions of dollars for the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania. The nature of my job is that so much of the work we do is secret until we're able to talk about it. It's a little hard for me to get into a lot of details, but let me focus on just a couple things. Number one, you're going to see much more activity when it comes to the national settlement discussions with the opioid manufacturers and distributors that I've been leading with a handful of other attorneys general, bipartisan group of attorneys general from across the country, so that we can deliver billions of dollars to the states for treatment. Another area where you're going to see more activity is in our ongoing investigation of the fracking industry and the way in which they have been poisoning our water, making our air less safe, and harming families all across this Commonwealth. And so I think you're going to see more activity there as well. And then we've got other really important things happening in regions across our state. One I'll mention is our investigation in the Scranton School District, and it has already yielded a number of arrests. I think you're going to see more activity there. And there are a number of other examples like that in regions across Pennsylvania for issues that are really important. Again, the nature of our work is such that it's really hard to get into a lot of details. One other thing I'll mention, just given the COVID pandemic, is we're going to continue to do everything we can to protect people economically and from a public health perspective. And I recently announced a criminal investigation into several nursing homes across Pennsylvania. You're going to see some real activity on that in the coming months.
Yeah, I mean, one of the fascinating things is there are now these restrictions, if you will. If you go out of state, you have to come back and get quarantined, or have within 72 hours, I think, of getting back. If you've had a negative coronavirus test, then you can get in the state. But there's virtually no enforcement mechanism. I mean, I'm not saying that people shouldn't do it. I'm just saying there's no and now the Centers for Disease Control looks like they're changing the 14 days of quarantine to 7 to 10 days. So what about the enforcement?
Well, let me give you a legal answer, Terry, and then let me give you an answer. The legal answer is that the orders that have come from the governor and the health secretary and the various health departments across Pennsylvania and some of the counties that have health departments, they're enforced either by your local municipal police, or if you don't have them, by the state police. That's the enforcement mechanism. It's not my office that does that work. But I think, as the governor has acknowledged many times, it's impossible for law enforcement to enforce all of these various orders. And what he's done is he's appealed to people's better angels. He's appealed to Pennsylvanians to do their part to slow the spread. Look, there's some basic things we can do. Wear a mask if you're going out in public. This is not hard. This is not controversial. It doesn't make you more or less patriotic, to wear one. In fact, I would argue that it shouldn't be politicized or put in terms of patriotism or freedom at all. It's about keeping your neighbors safe. It's about keeping your family safe. It's about following the basic science and health data that exists and not politicizing it. So what I hope is that people will heed the warnings from the experts, follow the directives from the health secretary, and we can all do our part to slow the spread and keep our neighbors safe.
All right, we're going to let's run to a break. When we come back, they're telling me it's the end, that we've been through this second interview. What can I tell you? I got all caught up in what you were saying that I forgot what we were doing. All right. Well, at any rate, you're always welcome on the program, and keep up the work. And if you have breaking news, I expect to hear about it on this program. But thanks for coming on.
Hey, listen, Merry Christmas to everyone. Happy Hanukkah. Happy New Year. I hope everybody stays safe and healthy.
I couldn't agree more. Everybody stay safe. All right. We'll see you next week for another edition of Pennsylvania Newsmakers. And as always, stay safe.